Welcome to the Mukilteo Football Show. My name is Miles. The Rams defeat the Vikings 27-9, tripling the Vikings score on this Monday wildcard. The Rams really came into the Minnesota Vikings winter home in Arizona and thumped them. Thumped those 14-3 Vikings right out of town. You didn't really get to experience the Vikings crowd, but it was a heavy Vikings crowd. Go back and watch the beginning of the game and a couple of the early Stafford Rams drives. The Vikings crowd was so loud, cheering for their defense, and the Brian Flores defense has done great all year. Rams called a timeout at one point. It was so loud. But they went for it on 4th and 1 in field goal range right there, and they really got out so hot on the Vikings. That 4th and 1, I think that was inside of the 15 in field goal range. Sean McVay learning as well that kicking field goals is more of a reason that teams lose than 4th downs unconverted. It really is. Surrender field goals are actually worse. We're finally moving in that phase. If Sean McVay is doing it, because he has been a surprisingly conservative coach on that type of thing, but he went for that 4th and 1. They got the touchdown. They're up 7-0. Things just got worse and worse and worse for the Vikings. It's just a bad game. We just can't catch a break on these Monday wild cards. I mean, we've had 4 of them now. This is the 4th year where we've had the Super Wildcard weekend with a game on ESPN on Monday. None of them have been competitive. We thought for one moment the Vikings had a fumble 6 when they were down only 7 points. I think late in the first quarter, but that was reversed. It showed that Matt Stafford had flipped it out. Absolute agree, it wasn't a fumble, but it was totally intentional grounding. And apparently, they can't call intentional grounding if they ruled it a fumble. So if they reverse it to not be a fumble, they can't then call the penalty. So, I don't know why, but they apparently can't. And even then, the Rams punted after that. So the Vikings defense, they shored up a little bit, but it was the Vikings offense. And it starts and ends with poor old Sam Darnold. No, the offensive line wasn't good, but this was Darnold. He was helpless to identifying pressure, reacting to the blitzes. Some say Sam Darnold is still holding onto the ball, frozen, unsure what to do. He's just bad. And even as the Vikings defense started getting some stops, it just didn't matter. Darnold threw an interception. Rams punted. Darnold fumbled the ball. Fumble 6. Touchdown for the Rams defense. Now they're up 17-3, and you just see where this is going. Like Jared Verse is flipping into the end zone. Great rookie. Had an amazing year. I think there's a Witherspoon sack. Credit to that great veteran. He was on San Francisco and Pittsburgh for a while. Good to see him have some success. I think he got hurt at the end there, so that's a bummer. Hope he's ready for Philadelphia. But you could just see Darnold's face, the Vikings' faces. It was just wave after wave crashing over. Not each wave is connecting fully, but this is a blowout. And the Vikings, rightly, I thought, put everything they had into that final drive before the half. They're at their 50-yard line. They're calling all their best plays. It's 4th and 2. They're going to go for it. And that ends up as an 11-yard loss sack. So Stafford rejoined the game at that point. I think that was inside the 2-minute warning, and the Rams were super aggressive. like reminiscent of the way that they were super aggressive going for points against the Bills earlier this year. And they passed the ball down the field, got that touchdown. They're up 24-3 at half. And really, like, the aggression by Sean McVay is to be praised. Like, Rex Ryan or Bill Cowher or Mike Tomlin would have had this game at 16-3. They would have kicked it on 4th and 1 on the first drive of the game, and they would have ran the clock out carefully to get the nice field goal after the turnover on downs here. Would have been 16-3. Still fine, but a huge difference. 24-3 and 16-3 are huge. And, even if you had missed one, this is why the math works. If you had missed one of those opportunities and just thrown a pick, you'd still net more points. Be 17-3 instead of 16-3. So you can miss one and still net more points, but that's beside the point. Boy, these Monday night wild cards aren't going well, are they? So I think the fourth game that we've had a playoff matchup Monday night on ESPN. Rams beat the Cardinals in 2021. I think that was like 34 to something. Cowboys beat the Bucks in 2022. That was 31-14. Bucks beat the Eagles last year 32-9, and now here the Rams beat the Vikings 27-9. I went back and looked at the Pro Football References. We have at no point in the second half of these Monday playoff games had a one-possession game. No point across any of these four games have we had a one-possession game. And even crazier, besides the beginning of the third quarter with the Bucks and the Eagles, when the Eagles were only down by 9, no other part of any of these second halves has been within 14 points. The losing team has not been within 14 points, except for when the Eagles were down by 9 to start the third quarter. Remember, they ended up losing by 21. It's like, oh my God. The Rams sailed, the Cowboys sailed, the Bucks sailed. It's just like, what's ESPN got to do to get a good game here on Monday? Starting to get crazy. But our divisional matchups are now set. The Rams will be traveling to Philadelphia. The Vikings are probably saying they need to move on from Sam Darnold. Make that same decision that you did after 2017 with Case Keenum. Understand that this was his peak. You can't pay for the peak. But unlike any other team in history that's been in this predicament, the Vikings may actually be relieved when you combine this game with the Lions game last week. Like, hey, they actually didn't want this tough decision. They spent a 10th overall pick on J.J. McCarthy last year. It's his team going forward. This made the decision for him. So, and they showed what they thought of him, too, what they thought of Sam Darnold. The second half, they're still handing off to Aaron Jones. It's like, why? There's so many runs when you're down 18 points. And then in the mid-fourth quarter, at the 7.5 minutes, Joe Buck was calling this out, but they were just taking their time, huddling up. It's mid-fourth quarter, down 18, your season on the line, and they're huddling up. That's clearly because O'Donnell determined we're going to lose by 40 if we have Darnold start passing this ball with any kind of hope, reckless hope through the air. He's Phillip Rivers. Darnold was bad today, and credit to him for a good season. He showed that he deserves definitely some stretches of starting quarterback somewhere, at least top tier backup, Ryan Fitzpatrick style. He got Justin Jefferson to another first team All Pro. The Vikings went 14-3 for crying out loud, but the Vikings can add this to their 15, 17, and 22 regular seasons where we all want to believe, but we just can't. Yeah, this is Darnold was horrible today. Like I almost feel mean bringing it up. Like for all the flack that Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, Jordan Love, they've got a lot of flack over this weekend, and they had some bad stat lines and some bad plays. But I will give my wholehearted opinion that Sam Darnold put up the absolute worst performance of this wild card round. Like, I get it. There's all sorts of stats you can pull, and tape grinders can have this opinion, but like, I watched every play of all 6 of these games, and I'm telling you, Sam Darnold was the worst quarterback on these fields. So Rams go to Philly as the fires rage on in Los Angeles. It's very sad, but hopefully things die down and get corrected. But certainly no fun for Los Angeles. Mukilteo Football Show. This show is football, everything, NFL history, legacy, ups and downs of the season. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. So for the first couple years of this podcast, I would use this Monday with the one playoff game to talk about the all-pro teams, announced over the weekend. I didn't do it last year because we had 2 games on Monday. The Steelers and Bills had moved to that Monday morning due to the snow, but I'm just going to cut that. I don't want to talk about the all-pro teams. I just don't think I'm an expert enough to really weigh in on really anything but the glamour positions that you can tell from the TV broadcast, I could say this: Lamar Jackson seems like he's going to be MVP because the AP voters who vote for the all-pro teams, they're the same ones who vote for MVP. Unless they somehow coordinated to get Lamar Jackson first team all-pro, but Josh Allen MVP. That would be awesome, because these are 2 MVP-worthy seasons. If they could do that, kind of Lamar got MVP last year and first team all-pro this year, like his history would, kind of still show how good this year was by the fact that he got first team all-pro over the MVP. But I don't know. I don't think they coordinated that. So yeah, I'm not going to talk all-pro. I just wanted to had a couple of grab bag, end of season items here, kind of one for each category: rushing, receiving, and passing. That I just wanted to wrap up the 2024 NFL season with. Career leaderboards, all that stuff is important to me. So I'm going to talk about that for a while. And let's start with something that I've mentioned on the podcast before, which is related to Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. First team All-Pro Saquon Barkley, second team All-Pro Derrick Henry. Seems right. Related to them only being referred to by their total rushing yards, right? Like I've ranted about, like, why doesn't Derrick Henry's 22-yard screen pass count at all? Why isn't it part of his game, his ended game stats? Like, it's the only time a running back ever gets to count their receiving yards is if that is enough of a percentage to make it look good, right? So it's like 132 rushing yards. You're just going to see that 132 number up there. And if you had 20 receiving yards, they're not going to say 150 total yards. But if they had 98 rushing yards and 60 receiving yards, then we're going to hear 158 total yards. So like there's this weird decision being made by the statisticians, by the headlines, by the blurbs, where we count the receiving yards sometimes, and then other times we don't. And we just do it based on what makes the player look best in that moment. So I get it. Rushing yards are the things that make Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry look the best right now. Saquon Barkley, 8th most rushing yards all time. Derrick Henry, 11th most rushing yards all time. And yes, Henry was aided by his 17th game, in which he had 186 yards versus Pittsburgh, but he still did it, right? He still ran for those yards. And even if you took that out, he'd still be 32nd all time. So, I mean, nothing to slouch at. But, 8th and 11th all time sounds really good. And that's why we're focused on rushing yards. One thing they didn't bring up, I never heard anyone bring this up. Saquon Barkley hasn't even passed up Derrick Henry's best year yet. He never did. Henry in 2020 has the 5th most rushing yards all time. Like did that ever come up? Titan Derrick Henry 4 years ago had more yards than Saquon Barkley currently has in this season. Barely heard about it. But okay, yards from scrimmage, though. That is the thing that matters. That's the actual offense. That's what we actually watch on our screen. 1984 Eric Dickerson's great. It's not the best running back season of all time. Once you sort the Pro Football Reference by yards from scrimmage, that's when you get 2000 Marshall Faulk in there. That's when you get 2006 LaDainian Tomlinson in there. Get some Marcus Allen, get some Christian McCaffrey, get some real games, real seasons in there that you felt through those years. And Barkley falls to 13th on the total yards from scrimmage in history. That's still great. We're parsing the cream of the crop, but he falls to 13th. Surprisingly passed by 2012 MVP Adrian Peterson. He did not surpass 2012 Peterson in yards from scrimmage. I would have thought Peterson would have had less receiving yards than Barkley, but Peterson had more. Henry, his season this year, he's 45th all time. Relatively still great, but he's down with other seasons that you remember. 2016 David Johnson. 1992 Thurman Thomas. And by the way, 1977 Walter Payton, who had 100 more total yards in 3 less games. But because they weren't all rushing yards, they're not on the list that we've been seeing lately. And I just wanted some perspective for that. Props to Barkley and Henry, but they're in the blob of all-time great seasons. Okay, I wanted to also talk. I did this rant a bit. Mike Evans, 11 1,000-yard seasons. I love it. I appreciate it. I think Evans is one of the coolest, best receivers of this generation. Consistent as heck, season to season. Inconsistent as heck, game to game, especially earlier in his career. But he is Tim Brown. He is not Jerry Rice. Wash your mouth out with soap when you start talking about Mike Evans and Jerry Rice without plenty of qualifiers about this statistical anomaly. Yes, he's the first receiver since Jerry Rice to get 11 seasons, 1,000 yards in a row. Some people, I saw Bill Cowher, Nate Burleson, or someone on CBS said, and Evans did it in his first 11 seasons as opposed to Rice. Like, okay, Rice didn't get in his rookie year and then did 11 after that. Like, dial it back. But I said this on the preview. Move the bar to 1,050 yards. To 1,050 yards. And now Mike Evans loses 5 of his 11 seasons. He's got seasons of 1,001, 1,004, 1,005, 1,030, 1,050. He loses 5 of his seasons just by moving the bar 50 yards. Jerry Rice loses none, of course. For Jerry Rice, 1,000 yards would have been a horrific year. I mean, Jerry Rice with only 1,000 yards? Like, what are you talking about? Scrub your mouths out with soap. We're talking about Mike Evans and Jerry Rice. Just need the proper qualifications. Okay, and then last point to bring up, career stat-wise, Aaron Rodgers, 500 touchdowns. I'm actually glad that Aaron Rodgers got 500 touchdowns at the very end there. I personally think we have seen the end of Aaron Rodgers. He said once he retires, we won't ever hear from him again. I don't believe you, Aaron Rodgers. I look forward to your lecture to us about why that was unreasonable to think. The thing that you said, we shouldn't have thought it. Yeah, we'll look forward to that. Hopefully we won't care, but we probably will. I'm just happy that he got to 500 because it solidifies in the history books that time period, that 2007 to 2013 time period where we all knew it was special with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers in their primes, the last good seasons of Brett Favre in there. That is the 500 touchdown club. Rodgers got there. They all passed Marino, who played in a different era. Certainly would have had 500. Props to Dan Marino. But they all got to 500. And that is so cool to me. Because they are that core that was playing all at that same time. And it's going to be a long time before we see a quarterback throw their 500th touchdown again. I don't think Matt Stafford's going to make it. He's at 377 right now. He's 36 years old. So he's 123 touchdowns away. Russell Wilson's at 350. He's 150 touchdowns away, clearly on the downside of his career. Cousins is next at 288. He's barely halfway there. So those guys aren't going to get there. So obviously we turn to Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar. But none of them, I don't think any of them are going to reach 500 in this decade, in the 2020s. If they averaged, all four of them, if they all averaged 35 touchdowns a year, which is fair, because only Mahomes is averaging more than that right now, but they're all averaging between 30 and 35 touchdowns a year, if you throw out Lamar Jackson's 2018, which you should. So 35 touchdowns a year for all four of those guys. Just perfect, no injuries, perfect success. Then Mahomes would throw his 500th touchdown in 2031. Allen the next year in 2032. Lamar Jackson the year after that, 2033. And Burrow in 2035. So we are going to go a little bit here. So this little core, this Brady, Breeze, Manning, Rodgers, and Brett Favre, they are the 500 club. And I'm going to go a little while with that as our career leaderboard. And for some reason, Rodgers throwing that 500th touchdown in week 18 and throwing the three others, I don't know, I liked it. It was kind of cool. It solidified, it stamped that era, which is a formative era for me. Brady, Manning, Breeze, Rodgers, suiting up, slinging it. 2007, 2013, great years, or 2015 really. Great years. Wonderful times. 500 Club. When the 500 Club was active. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Kirk and I are gonna preview the AFC divisional game tomorrow and the NFC divisional games on Wednesday. My name is Miles. Good night.